Hello, everybody, and welcome along. I'm going to start that again because you glitched.
It's all right.
It's all right. Hello, everybody, and welcome along to episode 8 of season 3 of the A Game of Two Halves podcast. I'm your host, Sean Watson, and joining me once again is Kieron Dobson. Kieron, welcome along. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Cheers for asking, Sean. Yourself?
Good, thanks. Been a good week.
Yeah, good weekend football.
That sounded really false of me, actually. Sounded like a really automated response, but yeah, no, it's been all right, thanks.
Yeah, I had a similar reaction when you first asked me how I am. You ask me how I am every week, and I have to remind myself that I'm on recording, so I have to check in with you, make sure you're okay too. So no,
Yeah,
we'll
it's not
put
like
the
we just
falsities out the way. We hate each other really.
yeah, we just start the Skype call, we don't even speak, and then as soon as the red light comes on, it's go time. But yeah, no, glad you're all right. Glad you come back for another week. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, no pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We're going to start this week with the North London derby from, as we record, yesterday. Spurs beat Arsenal 2-0 in a Mourinho masterclass, as is now trademarked. The eye roll from Kieron, we'll get to that. 2-0 shutout, and that means Spurs go back to the top of the table after, I think it's 11 games now. Do you see Spurs, first of all, do you see Spurs sticking around at the top of the league and being in the title race long haul?
Again, I've not budged really. No, I still think that they're top four candidates. I just can't take them too seriously for the league. They're a good team. They've got a really good squad, and they're pretty. They've done well really with only one window to work with to make this team sort of like a Mourinho squad. I hate even saying that because on the Sky coverage on the weekend, they must have mentioned it was Mourinho's team about 10 different times in the first half alone. But I mean, it is a Mourinho team that, that they're built for him. But I still just think that there are limits to teams that play that style of football that, before this impressive run they've had against the top teams, they struggled against Burnley. Obviously, they lost the opening weekend to Everton. There were other tough games where they ground out results. And again, credit to them, that's what you do. And you back yourself when you've got Kane and Son. But, you're relying on them some weeks when the other team sets up to defend the way Mourinho sets up to defend in these games against your Arsenal, Cities and that. It's going to be a question of whether they can unlock the door. And I don't know. I think if you set up to play that way all year, that has to have an impact on your ability then to suddenly switch it and be like, this football tiki-taka, breaking the lines, constantly creating loads of chances. So
yeah, they're playing in a similar way to how United have played the past couple of seasons under Solskjaer and still are doing to an extent. I know we're trying to shift it a little bit, but sitting in a little bit against the bigger teams, when they come on to you, the team are then breaking out and scoring on the counter-attack. That's what Solskjaer tried to do when he had he did before we had Bruno Fernandes to try and unlock a defence. That was all we had, wasn't it? Speed on the counter. And it looks like Spurs are happy without the ball, happy to bank in behind, and as you say, Kane and Son and Bergwijn or Lucas Moura or whoever it is can hit them on the break. But as you say, that's all well and good when you're playing a big team in inverted commas when I mention Arsenal these days, but you get the drift. The likes of City, Chelsea, that will come at you. It's fine, it's a tactic that will work because, like you say, the back door will be open. But when you play a team like Burnley, like I think it was West Brom, they got the late winner against, where a team...
remember, sorry.
Yeah, no, when a team will sit in and they have to be the aggressors and try and pick the lock, I suppose, that's when it might be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, that's my assessment. I still do think that I'll probably be banging this drum until like the 37th game week of the year, but I still do think that they have benefited from having a wider gap between the end of last year and the start of this year than the rest of the squads, that were competing for the top six last year and are this. And I still think that, I choose to believe this really. I do think that the early fixtures in the Europa League against, some teams, teams I couldn't tell you the name of now, frankly, No disrespect to some of the teams in the Europa League knockout rounds, and before you get to the group stage. But I do think they've worked out quite nicely for them as pre-season games. And I think again, still to this day, they're scoring goals early. The 2 goals that they scored on the weekend against Arsenal, I couldn't tell you the exact minutes, but I imagine the Son one was in 15-minute range and probably
Around
20-25.
Kane was half time. Kane was on half time.
Oh, was it? Fair enough. Well, but again, they're still getting these early goals. I'm going to double check now in case Son's was.
No, I think you're about right. About 15 and 45, I think 44.
Yeah,
like
the 13th minute and 45th. Yeah. So again, when you get these early goals, it's a lot easier to then set up to defend, because you then again, Arsenal had to really open up. And then for that second goal in particular, obviously it was 5-on-2 or whatever it was. Obviously, Arsenal was sort of unlucky that Partey was limping, could have handled it better. But yeah, so it's a much easier task for Spurs when teams are sort of at their mercy trying to do anything to score. So I think over 38 games, it's not a title winning formula. I've never seen it done before in this way.
Not as obviously defensive as this. I think when Spurs played City had 80% of the ball. That I don't think I've ever seen a title winning team have 20% and win a league. But who knows? Who knows if the results keep happening? They keep winning. I think it's 4 clean sheets and 5 clean sheets in the last 6 or something like that. It's the defence is holding steady at the minute, and I suppose we do have to give the defence credit for shoring that up. I know that it's essentially a back 6. I think Gary Neville made the point that Eric Dyer's very protected in that back 6. It's a different proposition playing as a centre back for Spurs than it is for City or Liverpool, where the team is going to flood forward and it's going to be you and the striker on the halfway line. Understand that, but at the same time, the stats do carry some weight, don't they? And 4 clean sheets in a row is going to take you places.
Yeah, he is capable of getting these runs out of teams as well. Again, I think the other factor that I don't think will play a part this year, but I do think long term for Spurs, again, I'm not going to surprise anyone here, but a United fan who wasn't fond of the Mourinho spell, but typically speaking, it's hard to keep a team playing in this way with this mentality for too long. I think eventually, again, it's all well and good now, and again, everyone was talking about how Mourinho's got everybody into the thinking, all the coaches are running out and shouting and doing the dramatics, and all the players seem to have been, there's an element of buy-in. But I mean, this is a Spurs side that has never seriously competed in the league for a long time. They've had a couple of runs here and there. They had the good run with Poch to get to the Champions League final. But again, this is someone like Harry Kane. This is his first chance to really play in a title-winning team. And again, so I can imagine right now there is an element of buy-in from him, thinking, I'll do what it takes to win these games. And at the minute, they're winning the games. But when they play this way and they concede early, Mourinho will say it's a bit of bad luck or a poor effort. But those when a few of those moments happen, or a few of those games go the other way, as they can do, I think that's when heads start to drop, because you start thinking, well, again, if Arsenal had got an early goal, they didn't. But if they had got an early goal in that first 5-10 minutes, or before Son scored, Son's then, he's set to play on the halfway line for the majority of the game, average position. Yeah. And he might start thinking, if it's 1-2-0 Arsenal 60 minutes in, this isn't the best way for me to play. There's better ways of getting.
No, it's fine when it's plain sailing and coming off, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's the long-term challenge for Spurs, but we'll see. Different ways of playing the game. There are revolutions in football. I talk about them a lot, and maybe the changes to, I don't know, the VAR rules, or the lack, the amount of games that were played at the minute in what is a tight season. I don't care what Gary Neville says. This is a strange season. Maybe this is the way to go. Maybe shutting up shop and killing teams and count is the way to go. And obviously, they're perfectly set. Kane's excellent, receiving the ball with his back to goal, bringing other players into play, as we saw with the first. We'll see. I'm sceptical, though. As you can imagine, I would be.
Yeah, I mean, it's Jose Mourinho. Your opinion hasn't changed on him since we did the Mourinho special back in season 1, I'm guessing.
No.
Go and check it out if you haven't, by the way. I think it's episode 4 in the archives.
More entertaining when United were worse and I was more angry about
Yeah.
life. But yeah, I can't believe he's not had any particular, length of time away from the game. I can't believe that a Leopard's going to change its spots now. Another experience this time at United. I think, he's sort of doubled down again. I questioned the fit with Spurs, but I have to say they've managed it well in the short term. And I do think that right now that squad looks ideal for him. But again, I do wonder long term what happens with them. I don't think they're going to be in as good a place in 2 years as they would have been had they just stuck with Poch. Let's put it that way.
I agree.
If Mourinho does turn this around, or if he does find a way of imprinting his style of play on the game again in a way that wins trophies, then I'll be the first to say fair play. So,
is it important that it's not a good style to watch as a Spurs fan? I'm not asking you because you're not a Spurs fan, but from the perspective of a Spurs fan, does it matter that they're a bit dull?
Not when you're winning. It's simple as that, isn't it? We have the same. We had games where you would play to not concede and hope you got lucky at the other end, where it worked out for us. And when it works, you're happy, but when it doesn't, that's the thing. I guess the crux of my issue with his style of play these days. I think if you don't win that many games, which again, they've had a good run and they're still only 3 points clear of us, and they've played. It's been almost perfect for them so far at the start of the season. And granted, you can look at I look at it, the Europa League build-up of games early on. I look at that as a positive for them. You could easily argue that it's worked against them and they've done particularly well to manage the schedule. But if they have 2-3 games that go against them, when you lose in that way, where it appears from the fans' perspective that your team's got a lack of fight, or they're not playing for the team or the manager. It looks so depressing because a lot of players there, they get the ball, they look clueless, they're passing it backwards, or there's often a lot of lateral play. And then the ball's going long, and you look clueless, and it's a really tough way to watch your team lose. So again, we'll see what happens because there will be a game or two where that happens with them. I'll see the reaction then. If they respond well, then I'll rethink. But as yet, I wasn't expecting Arsenal to test them in that way. So no. I'm not going to change my mind now.
To the extent that I had 3 Spurs players in my fantasy football yesterday: Son, Kane, and Reguilon at left back. Got me a shed load of points. So, but like you say, that's a vote of confidence and a lack of confidence in Arsenal troubling Spurs yesterday, and that's a sign of where Arsenal are at. We'll get to Arsenal in just a second. I just want to mention Harry Kane. You mentioned him earlier, but he's coming for a little bit of criticism today, I've seen on social media. And it's for a sort of a movement that he does when challenging for a header or not challenging for a header. So you've probably seen it, but if you haven't, if you see Kane on the edge of a penalty box or defending his own box generally, and he's trying to head the ball away or looking to head the ball away, and he sees the centre half coming towering over him, Kane won't jump. And he'll let the defender jump into him and 9 times out of 10 win the free kick. Fine. But there is some chat that that's a deliberate move, which I'm sure it is. I've seen him look at the player. He knows what he's doing. But there's people saying that it's a very dangerous move and should be penalised as such. Where do you stand on that?
It's something should be done about it. When you move into sort of the landing space of a defender who's already committed and is in the air to win a free kick, you are putting the player that's landing in danger, because they're naturally going to try and move away from you. And as they come down, they're going to land on your body. And we see it all the time. They roll off the sort of the top of the back or the bottom of the neck of the player who stays grounded, and they land awkwardly on the back. And it takes one bad injury.
It's clever from Kane, isn't it? Clever in inverted commas, because it looks like the defender's fouling him.
You say that now. There was again, I always talk about basketball. There was a basketball player a couple of years ago playing for the Warriors who goes up for a block or a dunk or a rebound, I can't remember. And it wasn't through any ill intent, but there's a player that stays on his feet but positions himself in such a way that he's protecting his team depending on where the ball lands. The player rolls across his back, lands on his back, and I think he has some serious, career-ending injury to his back. If that happens to any of the Arsenal players, we're not saying it's clever or cute.
No, and I don't mean it in he's trying to injure somebody. I just mean in terms of winning the free kick. I don't mean in terms of injuries.
No,
obviously,
if it brings other players into danger, which it is, he's getting lucky that he's not causing any injuries, so it's not clever. But he's playing the rules as they are.
It's hard to give a foul against somebody who to the eye looks like he stood still. Do you know what I mean?
It's the classic. If the referees aren't calling it, then the players are going to do it. If it means they're getting an advantage on the opposition, they've got to do it.
And it doesn't mean that Kane's setting out to injure people. It's just a way to win a free kick. I don't think he's that type of player. But if it is going to...
I want to... Again, there's an element of, he's not that type of player. Well, he's the England captain. I always talk about this, but he's a young, white, homegrown talent who's come through the English game. There's a tendency to say that, if he was Spanish or Mexican, we wouldn't be saying, if it was Diego Costa, we'd be saying, there was an injury as well a couple of years ago where there was a tackle where Kane went way over the top on a player's ankle as well. I can't remember exactly where, I think it was against Liverpool, might be making this up, but, I'm not saying that he's intending to injure a player. I see it, he's trying to gain an advantage, but with that said, it's still dangerous. He shouldn't be doing it, really.
It is dangerous. There's no doubt about it.
No, again, it takes one player to get seriously injured, and Kane would regret that then. And,
yeah, of course.
But and he would say, "Oh, I never meant it." But there is a precedent. It's not something only he does. It happened again in an earlier.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's wrong to probably isolate him, but the spotlight's on him on social media. So I've seen it. Yeah, it's happened to myself, not to not to play the victim and drag my own name into it. But when I've played 11-a-side in the past and I've jumped for a header and the player hasn't jumped, I've landed pretty heavily, and the worst injury I had was I winded myself, so it's not the end of the world, but it bloody hurt at the time. So it can be, I do know firsthand how it does feel. So yeah, maybe the referees need to have a look at it and just keep an eye out for it.
I think it's quite a simple fix as well. If you just make it about if a player moves into the landing space while the defender is in the air, I understand that, it could be seen as, naturally moving in, but if the player's making 2 or 3 steps to move underneath a defender and then isn't attempting to jump, then what are they doing? I think the referee would have every right to say in that scenario, you're out of order. Whether you caution them or I don't know, but something should be done. Because again, you don't want to see a player have, any serious spinal damage or landed on the head awkwardly or neck.
It's going to happen. They're coming in from such a height. I mean, Kane's 6 foot odd. They're jumping on top of him. It's going to be 9-10 feet by the time they've hit the deck. So yeah, it's going to end in tears, isn't it? So the referees probably do need to have a good look at it and just keep their eye out for it in a game. But like you say, it's hard to spot. It's hard to, I don't know. I know they're aware of it now. They will be, but it's hard to just say when somebody's stood virtually still, that's a foul against you. It is a tough one to make that decision, but somebody needs to be brave enough. We said we'd talk Arsenal. We said we'd talk Arsenal last week, actually, when they got beat by, I think, Wolves it was last week, when Jimenez got injured, yeah. They've since been beaten by Spurs, as we mentioned. Arsenal TV was absolutely superb again. You not seen it? Oh, take the time in the break to go and watch it. Chairs going flying. I think somebody stamping on the floor, and I mean, it's pantomime season, isn't it? And that's turning into one. But always good fun. But yeah, Arsenal, where do you think they're at?
Well, they're not where I thought they were going to be. I've seen the season preview. I said that I thought they finished 3rd or 4th, I think.
Did you? I can't remember now.
No, I did. I think you have a couple of bad results in a row, and things do look worse than they actually are, I think, quite often. And I mean, yeah, losing to Wolves at home, losing to Spurs away, not 2 results that anyone wants to have. But
Villa 3-0 as well. That's probably worth mentioning.
Yeah, that was at home as well, wasn't it? They're now 15th, I believe. But I mean, again, I think the table is quite congested. I think if they win 2 games, then potentially going to be top 8, and then who knows what happens from there. So again, I wouldn't. If I was an Arsenal fan, I wouldn't be overreacting.
It's tough not to, isn't it? It's tough not to.
Yeah, and I think again the performances have been particularly bad. I think you look at the way they ended last year, and that probably fooled me. You looked at Aubameyang, his form at the end of last season. The midfield looked good. The defence looked really organised. They had a strategy for the games when they're on top, as well as having one when they play the teams that they're competing for the top 6 places with. It looked like they had an idea, whereas now it doesn't. Arteta's saying some strange things as well, I think, at the moment about the performances. He keeps talking about the amount of crosses they're putting in, and
it's not their game, is it?
No, I'm looking at the 2 number 9s, which is what they've got, and neither of them are particularly good in the air.
No.
If you had Giroud, I'd say fair enough, but they don't.
Or Kane.
Well, yeah, it's a weird way of looking at it. I get it. Again, when you play at Spurs and they sit deep, you do have to resort to cross.
You have to. They had no choice yesterday. I mean, I don't know if you saw Alex Scott after the game. She made a great point about that crossing and the fact that that's not their style. But if a team is defending really deep against you and it's 10 minutes to go and you're 2-0 down, what other choice do you really have?
No, and so I do understand that. But again, it's not the first week that Arteta's mentioned that when defending a losing performance. And I think I would be a little bit worried if I was an Arsenal fan about, it makes it sound like he hasn't actually got a full understanding of why he's losing these games. And I think, that would be my fear.
Did you see the meme of him in the week when he's sending somebody on as a sub and he's like that? And somebody's trying to remember what Pep said to De Bruyne one time or something like that. Brilliant.
Again, I have been impressed by Arteta, but again, this is a bad run that he's on now. A lot will be made of the way they respond. And I think modern day...
Does it revolve a little bit around Aubameyang and how well he's playing? Because there's no hiding the fact that he's badly out of form at the minute. I think 1 Premier League goal this season. But at the end of last season, he fired them to the FA Cup, scored a lot of league goals. Is it a simple case of when he's on, Arsenal are on?
Yeah, but, I mean, the goals he was scoring last year, he's not getting those chances now. I mean, he had a couple.
He had one, didn't he?
Yeah, but I've said this when I've defended, young United strikers over the years. There's an expectation that strikers should take every chance, but Salah and Mane score a lot of goals not because they are clinical, but because they get in the right position to constantly.
And they're fed well.
Liverpool feed them, yeah. But
combination of both.
In that service right now.
No, I agree.
I'm gonna drop it all at his door, but the drop off in his form is big, and obviously it's not helping them right now. But I will say, I think it is more to do with the team. I don't think it is Aubameyang is poor, therefore they're not doing well.
Yeah.
All of their goals, last year,
no.
still had, performances from elsewhere. And they've obviously added world class to the picture, and
yeah, absolutely. So, all right, I'll rephrase slightly. With their success last season, obviously they got the FA Cup, finished well. Was it down to Aubameyang? So what I'm saying is, did his goals mean Arsenal slightly faked, inverted commas, faked how good they looked, and now they're sort of playing at the level where more or less that's where they are?
I don't know. I think obviously again you've got a striker taking chances, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Goes without saying. I do understand the question though. I think obviously I don't know. I don't think it. I think they were playing better as a team. I think the whole was better last year. I don't think it is as simple as they're not taking the chance, or Aubameyang's not taking his chances. I've not looked. I imagine if you looked at the XG, the XG's probably dropped significantly from the end of last year to this year. Again, I should check that before the next podcast. I will, but my assumption is that the XG has dropped and they're performing worse as a team rather than it's just what it's done. Again, he's not helped. He's got the big contract, and so you want to see him deliver on it. But I don't want to lay it all at his door. I do think that, I'm watching them play and they just look a bit stagnant. They don't look brave. They look a bit, scared at times almost, and a little bit too concerned about making the right pass. And I think that's probably a symptom of Arteta being from the class of Pep a little bit, where, it's all about the little details about where a pass goes, the weight of it, which foot it goes to, the angles and, the little triangles you create, rather than sometimes the simple stuff of getting the balls in the right zones and, taking your chances. I'm not saying that I'm in favour of the latter. I'm just saying that,
It needs a mix, doesn't it? You need a mix.
I just think that, that whatever's happening, the coaching isn't helping at this point. I don't think my wider point with Arteta, because I say that I'd said earlier that I think he probably fooled me a little bit, or Arsenal did. What you often get in the modern current crop of top managers is you get these people that come in with like a new philosophy or idea or way of playing, and it's all about that, and it's sort of all or nothing. I still think that the best manager of all time was Sir Alex Ferguson because of how adaptable he was. There was no one way of playing over 25 years, or that 25-year span that he was there. Obviously, he went through every different type of evolution of the game, whether it be the move to the Premier League, the move when Arsenal comes in to think about nutrition and fitness, the move when sort of data analysis comes into the game and it's all sports science. He went through everything and succeeded. And I think these days you've got these managers that have got an idea of the way they want to play and they're quite rigid in it. And again, for Pep, Jose, Poch, it worked. For Klopp, obviously it works. But they have to have those players and they have to be in that system, drilled, and it has to. And, he's brought in a few players now and it doesn't look like it's working at the minute. And I wonder whether, A, the squad's drilled, or B, they've not got the right players and, some of their expensive, Pepe was an expensive player, hasn't delivered. Ozil, very expensive player on the wage bill, isn't in the squad. Aubameyang just signed that new contract, not good enough right now. Lacazette, I don't know what, the strategy was, keeping both him and Aubameyang. There's just a lot of question marks.
Well, they're playing Lacazette at number 10, and that's clearly not his position. He's a goal scorer.
Player, but
he is a good player. But what is he now, 31?
Yeah, I think he's in that range.
And I think Aubameyang's over 30 now as well, so
they're both the wrong side of.
Yeah, so I mean, is that manageable? Are they're pinning all their hopes there to two strikers that are over 30? I don't know if that's viable going forward. I suppose economical.
I think as well at the minute, Arsenal. Again, I do think at the minute they're playing like a team that needs a win, just any type of win.
Yeah.
The thing that I picked up watching that game back, or the thing that stood out to me the most, was their first goal that they concede. Gabriel gets tight to Kane, drops off. Partey doesn't win the challenge, but really needs to make sure he wins that. And if he doesn't, he
fouls him. Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't do it. And then Spurs go the other way and score. When they played against us, Arsenal looked like they knew exactly what they were doing. And
yep.
The best thing about that performance, the man of the match, it should have been, was Gabriel for me.
Against us?
Yeah.
And El Neni, I'll say that as well.
I still think Gabriel was the one because the ball went into our striker's feet on the halfway line, back to goal. They couldn't turn. He wouldn't let them. He would hand them. If they'd have ran back to our goal line or to our keeper, he'd have followed them and he wouldn't let them turn around.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, like he was playing with fear with Kane, worrying about the dropping off, and it didn't look right. I think they're playing on low confidence. I think they just need a win. They've got a run of games now. You think they could turn it around? Yeah,
and it is too early to really write them off. I just checked the table then whilst you were talking, and they're 6 points behind us. And a lot of people are feeling good about where United are in the league right now, and not where Arsenal are. But there's 6 points, 2 wins. There's 28 games to go. It's too early, but they're not on a good run. We'll say that much. All right, we'll just finish off the first half, just on a lighter note, really. The Liverpool Wolves match on Amazon Prime saw the return of Clive Tilsley and Ali McCoist to the commentary booth, which we've not heard for a while, especially on the Premier League. Refreshing change from Fletch and Sav and Fletcher McManaman and Martin Tyler and Smith and Neville. Tilsley and McCoist, they've got... I don't know, I think we should hear more of these guys. I know Sky have got their commentators and BT have got theirs, but it was refreshing to hear two commentators different than what you normally hear, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. We have to say this, don't we? Because Clive's friend of the show, isn't he?
He'll be coming back, so I mean, no, I think I speak for myself, but I think you are.
Now. He's a busy man, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, that was a joke. I mean, I'm hoping Clive will come back. Clive, if you're watching, always welcome, pal. But no, I mean, I speak for myself. I probably speak for you too. But Clive Tilsley, for me, is the best in the business. So I want to hear him commentate on Premier League football. It's the most watched product for my money, football-wise. And I want to hear him do those games. I think Ali McCoist is a good co-commentator as well. He's light-hearted. He's different to what we normally hear. I think maybe it was just nice to hear a change more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the Liverpool game, but I heard nothing but good feedback, and I'm not surprised in the slightest. Yeah. I think Clive Tilsley is the best. I was going to say Clive then, but I didn't speak to him. But we'll call him Clive. Clive is the best commentator in the country by, a ridiculous distance. There's no one that captures the moment the way he does, that is sort of eternally... I think everyone used to say this about Motson, but I think they say it and they mean it about Clive. I don't know any fan base that thinks he has an agenda. There's no one that thinks that, he's not good on commentary. He brings the entertainment, he brings the information, he doesn't overdo it one way or the other. It's not too Hollywood, it's not too sciencey. It's just really well done. I've said before as well, it's something that he can't help, but he's got an excellent voice for it. It just sounds good, sonically, and whatever. It does matter.
It does matter.
That's
why we got you on, Kieron.
Yeah, my worst feature is my voice, I think. But and I take your point as well about Ali McCoist. I don't think anyone would say he's like one of these. I think Gary Neville and Carragher have done a good job of sort of framing themselves as sort of tactical whizzes who read the game really well and give you a live sort of breakdown of the players you're seeing it. But I don't. If they're going to do that, I actually want people that are qualified in that respect rather than, failed manager, ex-player. I want people that have... No, I'm not joking.
So you want qualified statisticians and tacticians?
If I want that, I would like to hear, and I don't know why they don't have...
Yeah.
People do video analysis for clubs, or ex-players people that do video analysis clubs, or coaches who've been in the scenarios, because it is always better when you hear a coach talking about what they think they're doing rather than Neville, who hasn't got... This isn't a pot, but he's just not got that experience to speak of. He's going off his playing days and what he's seen. I know he coached at England, but come on. And again, I don't want to talk about his fancy career, but McCoist is just pure entertainment. It says it as you see it. It's not... I'm not watching it and I'm thinking, he's going to explain something to me that, or how Pep's doing X, Y, and Z with Cancelo, Gundogan down the left.
Yeah.
And what he's describing what I'm seeing to a good extent. And again, it's bringing a level of entertainment. And much as obviously he's a disgraced man these days, but Andy Gray did the same thing when he used to co-commentate, I think. Again, his analysis wasn't ever really that good.
Still isn't, but it's for the working man a little bit more, isn't it?
Yeah, which...
Playing English doesn't hurt as a co-commentator. You just add in to give a bit of colour, a little bit of spice to what you're seeing. It's not always... You don't always need... I love the tactical insights. I like Neville and Carragher. I hear what you're saying about getting somebody qualified. Yeah. I mean, Sky have Faisal Islam as the economics editor. They don't have Alan Sugar. So, it's... I hear what you're saying. But for somebody like Andy Gray, I still stand by Andy Gray was the best co-commentator in the business. He just was. As all you want as a viewer is somebody to add to the moment, and Gray certainly did that. The analysis can come afterwards for me. I'll sit and watch the end of Monday Night Football. I'll do it tonight, and I can ingest that for an hour after the game. In the moment, you sort of want somebody reacting the same way you would, I suppose.
For me, yeah, and I agree. I actually, though, when I say this about, I'm not being flippant when I say about I want people who've actually worked in the analysis. I actually want that, but what I get is sort of like a faux version of it. I'm not saying that they're always wrong because they're not. There are oftentimes they're right. Neville Carragher, even Redknapp sometimes. But what I will say
Roll the
is
dice enough times, Kieran. The right numbers will come up.
broken clocks, right? Two
Yeah,
times. No, but
exactly.
the thing is, they might be right, and there are times again the things with Neville particularly that wind me up most is when I agree with him, but the way he's going about it, he builds up this agenda in his head, or he'll talk about a game that he's seen something in a player or in a movement or in a coach, but he's not on their level. He just isn't, and I'm sorry, but his record at Valencia speaks for itself, and as England, he was in that Hodge. It was one of the worst England teams of all time. Well, maybe not that far, but it was bad.
It's up there. We've had a few. It's in the conversation.
But it wasn't good, and there are some times where he's too critical of the play. The best thing about Neville back in the day, we've talked about this. The best thing about Neville when he came on was he was analysing things. He was talking about things being good. Too often they fall into the trap, these pundits, of just being too negative, and it gets to a point where it's blatantly obvious sometimes when a team's not playing well. I don't need sometimes that to be explained to me to the nth degree, and it will just turn into if you watch these teams play week in, week out, it will turn into him just beating the same old drum, talking about the same old thing, the same old player. It's just boring, and it becomes unbearable to watch. I don't know many United fans that like him covering United games. I don't know many Liverpool fans that like Carragher covering Liverpool games or Everton games with Carragher, because they're too into their own agenda or their own. You don't get that with McCoist, or you didn't get that with Gray. I'm getting the entertainment factor, so at least I'm getting something. Whereas I feel like I'm getting a bit of both, but not really enough of either with Neville and Carragher. They should stay as pundits for me.
Okay, that's fair. No, I agree with what you're saying, and I like Neville and Carragher both as pundits. Co-commentators, I could take or leave them, but I think the pundits' chair is where they should be. But yeah, I think we need to see a bit more variety. You sort of settle into the Fletcher and Sav and Fletcher, McManaman and Tyler and Neville. You get a bit formulaic and it gets a bit sameish, I suppose. So nice to see a fresh pair of voices. Same with us. Maybe we should change our lineup around a little bit.
Well, I had a lot of compliments when we had James on, so maybe
maybe that's the way.
Yeah, I'm better as like a commenter in the YouTube comments, and James is better on. No, I seemed a bit hot on that then, but I do get.
It's the mention of Gary Neville. It's like lighting a match.
His coverage does annoy me sometimes, and I just think I'm not. It is just about for the broadcaster just making it a talking point all the time. Sometimes just talk about the game. Don't have to exaggerate everything. Everything doesn't have to be the end of the world and the worst performance you've ever seen and stupid or idiot or think. Just doesn't always have to be like that. Is mine.
I agree. That's sort of why I brought it up, to sort of stoke the fire a little bit. So I'm glad you took the bait. Kieran, thanks for your contributions in part 1. Come back for part 2, and stick around for part 2 where you'll get all of this. Welcome back to the second part of the Game of Two Halves podcast. In this half, we'll be discussing Manchester United in depth. We'll be getting to the Champions League a little bit later on, discussing PSG and the upcoming Leipzig game. It might have already been played once we get to it, once we release this podcast, but we'll discuss it anyway. But we want to start with what's becoming a little bit of a trademark for United, really, in the Premier League at least. Going behind, winning. It was a case of that again when they beat West Ham at the weekend 3-1 after going down in the first half. Kieran, what was your summation of another victory on the road? I think that's 9 in a row.
Yeah, no, obviously good record, but I mean, I'm going to steal your joke again this week. Well, I say joke.
Go on.
I know you prepared it, but it really, truly was a game of two halves, wasn't it, Sean?
Roll credits. Yeah, it really was, and it has been for a while, hasn't it? The notorious slow starters in the league United at the minute, they almost like they need to go goal down to light the fire and start playing.
Again, I heard Neville say that during the game. You can imagine it annoyed me.
Does it annoy you now I'm saying it?
Yeah.
Well, it's right though, isn't it? I mean, that's what the eyes are saying. Well, they didn't play first half.
Yeah, we were awful, but I do think that I think what is happening. Okay, you look at Spurs; they're really sharp. They're from the first minute, the passes are fizzing around, they're connecting, first touch is there. We're taking time. We haven't had the pre-season. They're just not sharp. And I think in the end, we have got a good squad now. I just think the quality is showing in the end. I think that's what happens. I mean, Southampton were lucky. They typically. I mean, we agreed we played well the whole 90 minutes. We were just lucky with the way the 2 goals went in. But
Yeah.
Southampton have got a record of conceding goals in the second half. West Ham not at full strength at the minute. If they were, I think we'd have had a much tougher day, and if they'd taken more of the chances, it would have been more difficult. But again, as bad as we were in the first half, and we were really bad, that was one of the worst performances I've seen for us for a long time. We looked fine in the second half, and once we got the goal, we were going to win, 2-1 or 5-1. We missed some good chance at the end, and
The
I think
West Ham
it's a
game.
team.
Yeah, I mean it is. You can't deny that. I mean the West Ham game felt different to the Southampton game, like you say. I didn't fancy us coming back into the West Ham game because when we both said the Southampton game, the performance was fine. We were unlucky to be a couple of goals down at half time. We looked like scoring. We were playing okay. The West Ham game didn't feel like that, did it? We were slow, lethargic, and didn't create a chance in the first half. West Ham could have had 2 or 3, but the goal went in. We'll get to the debatability of that goal in a minute, but the goal went in and it changed, didn't it? The switch flicked again, and like you said, the floodgates opened and it could have been 4 or 5.
Yeah, no, I mean we were again. We have to talk about how bad we were in that first half. Nothing was going right. The defence were just giving up chances. Way too easy. Way too easy to pick apart. Midfield was almost non-existent. Scott McTominay had a really bad game. I don't know what the strategy was between him and Pogba. It looked like a 4-2-3-1 with Donny playing the 10. I thought it would have made more sense switching Donny and Pogba, but Donny didn't have a good game. I count for the fact that we weren't playing well, therefore it's hard for the number 10 to play well. But there were times, I think he lost the ball pretty much every time he got it. Cavani wasn't having much of an impact, was making his runs, but they weren't coming off. Martial was bad. It was just a really, really bad performance all around. So I knew something needed to change at half time, and for us it meant Bruno and Rashford coming on. But when they did come on, we looked more like our normal selves again, and it goes to show just how important Bruno is for us. He's just special, isn't he? I don't know the way of saying it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Solskjaer's had a lot of credit for those 2 substitutions. I'm not in that camp. I feel like that's the only move he could make at that point. He had to roll the dice, had to chuck his 2 best players on, or at least 2 most impactful players in Rashford and Bruno Fernandes. I don't think that was a stroke of tactical genius, but ultimately it won us the game. So what can you say? I mean, credit, I suppose, should go to Solskjaer, but I feel like it was an obvious. It was something I'd have done on FIFA, is what I mean.
I mean, I hear you. I mean, it wasn't like 3D chess, was it? Like you say, you're losing. You're clueless. You've got Bruno Fernandes on the bench, on form, one of the best players in the league. You bring him on, don't you? And obviously we weren't getting in behind the defence, and Marcus Stock comes on and starts making those runs, as does Bruno. So yeah, completely flipped the game on its head, and we were lucky with the first goal.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, it looked like it went out, but I mean, I can't really be sure.
I mean, yeah, and it looks like the ball's gone out, but the VAR didn't have the right camera angle. They didn't have the technology for it. So, David Moyes saying how the linesman's not seen it. I challenge David Moyes to sprint as fast as he can along the line whilst watching for offside, whilst watching a ball that's 40 yards in the air, whilst keeping his eye on the line on the ground, and make a decision in 0.5 of a second.
I agree with that. Obviously Moyes doesn't have to think about all the other aspects that the linesman did. And obviously Moyes, everyone's saying had the best view and it did look it. But what I would say is that it was strange that the linesman dropped his head so quickly.
I agree.
It was going to go out.
And I think between them, the 4th official, the linesman, the referee, between them, the arc of the ball out to in, the fact it pitched about a yard in play, they could probably have made an educated assumption that that ball had gone out, but they didn't. So once they hadn't, and the VAR don't have that camera angle to prove beyond doubt that it had gone out, they have to stick with the on-field decision.
Again, yeah, I think you could see from the camera angle that the VAR had, they had to give the benefit of the doubt to the attacking team because it wasn't clear that it had gone out.
Yeah.
You couldn't rule it out in that respect. And like you say, the linesman and the fourth official didn't see it go out either, evidently. So again, you have to give the goal. So again, if I was a West Ham fan, I'd be upset. And if I was Moyes, I'd be upset. But the reality is that it wasn't clear or obvious, to use the VAR terminology, that it had gone out. So, ultimately you have to say probably the right decision was made.
Yeah, and, a long ball upfield ends up in the back of your net. You've got to question your players as well, whether it went out or not. You've got to say, all right, it's a moment of brilliance from Pogba, but at the same time, it's a long punt upfield, one pass later and it's in the net. So
I did feel for them a little bit because it really was the only players that really stopped playing were the ones that were behind the place, like the strikers and that.
Play to the whistle. It's under 8 stuff, isn't it?
Or I don't think it made a difference. The defenders did stay switched on. It just was a good goal, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think the fullback sticks with Bruno. Obviously, Bruno was alive to it earlier, but I think he would have been anyway if it was clear it was staying in.
Yeah.
The defenders, I don't think, really stopped running. They were all in position. It was just in fact, almost too much to the extent that I think it was Souček that was screening in front of Pogba. It made his finish a little bit easy because he had him, someone to curl it around.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable strike. But
yeah, no, a great finish. And you can say we were lucky and, maybe we were, but we still, it takes a lot of quality to score 25, 30 yards, which that was. And, it's the quality Paul Pogba's got when
he plays. I had a hot take this week. Have you got a hot take?
No, so... Go.
Okay, so it's not this week. So no graphic, no music, but my hot take, you mentioned Nani last week, is Pogba the new...
No graphic, no cowboy music or anything like that for you, but for me...
I can't... The software's gone, you know the story.
Okay.
Is Pogba the new Nani? You mentioned Nani last week. Is Pogba our new Nani?
Right, and you've got me in a corner here, and I'll tell you why. I don't know if you'll remember this, but I will hold myself accountable. I once made the point that Hazard and Pogba, I take on board that when I'm attacking Hazard, the things I'm criticising him for, I could be describing Paul Pogba as well. I understand that because, good stats sometimes feel a little bit empty sometimes, and he has these great performances from time to time, but there are other times where he doesn't count. And I accept that has been true of Pogba relatively recently. The start of this season has been poor. It was good at the end of last year, but there have been times in that spell, obviously I admit, I'm a big Paul Pogba fan, but there were times under Mourinho we weren't getting the best out of him, and he has to take some responsibility for that. And there have been times now under Ollie where, he's been found lacking.
What I mean is...
what I'll say is I'm not going to agree, but I take your point.
All right, I'll settle for that. I thought you'd flip your lid a little bit, so I'll settle for that. The point I was making is we know what he can do. I mentioned it last week. We know what he can do. Doesn't produce it as often as maybe he should. So I thought of it in the bath the other night, and I thought I'm going to use that.
In the bath. Well, yeah. I don't know which is worse. But you're probably thinking of Hazard, weren't you?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I said it was a hot take. We mentioned Pogba there, obviously. Before we get to the Champions League discussion, there's been a little bit of news today that his agent, Mino Raiola, I think that's how you pronounce it. Mino Raiola's come out and said that Paul Pogba's basically finished at United and he's looking for pastures new. I mean, this isn't new information. Raiola's churned this out once a year, every season since we signed him back. But the timing of the news, again, before our biggest game of the season against Leipzig, tomorrow night as we record this, after he scored a good goal and, dragged us out of the mire a little bit on Saturday, it's classic Raiola, and I can't help but think that he's just a virus to football, that man, and a little bit poisonous.
Yeah, no, yeah, so if you're a United fan, you're going to feel that. But I'm trying to be as fair as I can. Riola will see it as Pogba wants to move and trying to force him out. And ultimately, if he gets this job done, then you say, if you're Pogba, great, he did his job. But as a United fan, yeah, no, the timing, as you say, we've got 2 big games this week. The game to decide whether we stay in the Champions League Tuesday and then the Manchester Derby on the weekend. And Riola has tried to potentially push Pogba towards Man City, I think before he signed for us and then under Mourinho. So, the timing, the timing for Pogba, if he wants to leave, is excellent, really, because he's, the guy that we signed to replace him had to go off at half time. Pogba scored the win, the goal that got us back into the game, and then we're going into 2 big games. But for United, obviously, it's not great. Ollie's gonna have to answer questions about it. It's going to be on the players' minds. Does he pick Pogba now? Does he not? If he drops him for the next 2 games, then what does that mean? Are we going to keep him? Are we going to sell him? So I think, it's a smart play in that respect from Riola. But yeah, for me, what I will say about it though is it because he has, as you mentioned, he has tried to, stir the pot a little bit with United and Pogba in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But is this sort of almost a little bit too late for him? Too little, too late for Pogba now, because we have signed Donny van der Beek, and yeah, he came off at half time after a not a great display against West Ham, but we know he's a top quality player. We've now got Bruno Fernandes, who, much as I love Paul Pogba, I'm not an idiot. Bruno Fernandes has delivered in a way that Paul Pogba hasn't, and I'm, not to say that Pogba should be expected to score and assist the most in the Premier League over a 40-game period, but Bruno has, and so. If you're thinking about who you're going to start at number 10, you have to pick Bruno every time. And United, we've still got 2 years on this Pogba contract. Pogba, this is his time now, 29. He's 27. He's 29 when that contract's up.
One more big contract?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is how the merry-go-round works for agents. But I know, Mino Raiola is a bit more brazen in it. But does Pogba really want to spend the next 2 years potentially in a situation where United can afford to say, do you know what, you're not picked, treat him like Ozil, or, because I think that's the position United are in now. We can do this, and I think the strength move from United, whilst it would be great in a sense to cash in if you've got Bruno and Donny there, in this climate, take our return, before losing him for free, and he's not on. He's on considerable wages, so you'd lose that off the books. But I don't know. We are in a position now where we could say, sure, we're doing well. We've got a good young team. We're not going to be bullied here, and no, I don't know.
Is it obvious that Pogba's going in either January or the end of the season? Now we've signed Van der Beek, very playing in the similar position. Bruno.
No, I don't think it is, only because I said it wasn't last year when the same question was being asked.
Yeah.
It's more, it would make more sense if Pogba left now. If he's clearly this unhappy at United and if his agent is going to this extent and United now have got his replacements already through the door, then yeah, you can see the logic. And, United fell short of the Jadon Sancho move due to the financial component of that deal, taking 300 grand a week off the books and taking some money off Real Madrid or whoever comes in for Pogba will help.
Would you settle for that?
I mean, I would settle for it. Yeah, I'm gonna be the captain who goes down with the Pogba ship here. I would still like to see him at United. I do think we are going to be competing in the next 3, 4, 5 years for trophies. I'd like to see him stick it out, prove everyone wrong, particularly the people that enjoy it when he doesn't play well for Manchester United, when or when things don't go well, or when he does do well, they don't want to talk about it. I'd like him to stick it to them. But with that said, we're now in a position where if we were able to cash in, and we could just wipe our hands clean of the Mino Raiola.
Yeah.
sort of, I don't know what you would call it, but we could just wipe our hands and say, let's not sign another, which I think will be an interesting thing because, I was talking about Erling Haaland last week. He's a Riola player. But yeah, no, if he went.
And that was half the reason we didn't get him in January, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That he's, United don't like dealing with Raiola. It's no secret. Ferguson didn't like him. And it's obvious why. And I'm not picking on him, but he makes. There's a lot of football agents that will operate in the same way, but it's how public he is with it. He's buying into his own ego with it. He thinks he's almost bigger than the players he represents. It's not good.
I think there's an element of that. I think no one really knew who he was properly until Pogba.
Agree.
Walked out on United at a young age. I think that put Pogba on the map going to Juve and Riola. And I think the fact that Riola has obviously, he's got other players as well. Haaland, I mentioned, other top high profile.
Lingard. You have Lingard for a period as well.
Yeah, Lingard signed with him last summer, didn't he? But it's true that he's not shy. He'll talk on TalkSport. He'll go to Tuto Sport or whoever it is that he supposedly said this to recently. He is a bit of a Hollywood agent, and there is a real debate about what football should do about that as a problem, because
I think he got 20 million when we signed Pogba back. I mean, that's outrageous.
Yeah, but it is a free market.
It is free. It's free market economics, isn't it?
I don't know. Again, I come at this and I think I do you ready when I say this, but I come at this from I watch basketball too, right? And the free agency is a much bigger deal over there.
You watch basketball?
Yes, I do, yeah. But free agency is a big deal in American sports because they don't do transfer fees. It's all trades and free agency. And the free agency, the players tend to run down the contract and then they can shop themselves around, see who they want to go around, negotiate salary. And obviously in football, it's not the done thing. We have the Bosman rule, but by and large, it's all transfers. The clubs want to cash in. There's a hierarchy of clubs. There's less equality in terms, from a financial aspect in football, and it will always be that way because football is just a wider sport. There's more countries, there's more levels, but I don't know whether there's an appetite to stop player movement in football. I like to think I'm one of the football fans that is more interested in what happens on the pitch, but I know so many people that really only want to talk about football when a player's transferring. And I know that even, any club, the way to get good is to sign Bruno Fernandes or to sign the equivalent or to sign a player that improves your team. So when you're playing well, you want to keep your players and maybe get a Thiago. But when you're not playing well, it's all about you focusing on the next transfer window. That's all the narrative these days is sack the manager or sign players. It's always the way.
Yeah.
And I don't know that football is ever going to want to say, do you know what? This is an issue. Player movement's an issue. We want to try and get more players to stay at clubs for longer. We want to have a situation where we're keeping the money within the game. I think UEFA, FIFA, I don't think they care enough about Riola getting 20 million here or there. I think they'd happily lose that, knowing that the player movement ultimately feeds the teams beneath because they get the big fees as well. And it keeps the churn of transfers going at all times. I suppose the other thing as well, I'm conscious I don't want to sound a bit hard done by here because United have got Pogba, but we got him because he had an agent when he was under 18, which we're not going to be able to sign in this country because of Brexit, players under 18 anymore. So it'll be great for Mourinho, and maybe this is going to be the revolution that helps him. But for United, we got him because he had an agent that was happy to move him. We lost him because an agent was happy to move him and on a free and get the money, and then we signed him on that basis. And we are one of the big clubs, one of the richer clubs who can afford to pay these agents because we're part of the problem. So I don't want to cry foul over
no.
agents taking advantage of us because we are the game. We play this game, and we'll be happy if in 2 years we can get Haaland to pay Mino Raiola another 15, 20 million again, if it means we get the player we want. So I don't want to, I agree that Raiola probably crossed the line, and I do wonder what it does for Pogba's happiness and value. United have kept Pogba probably in in a sense, despite, I think, Riola a little bit. I think had it gone a different way, we had, had he not been trying to bully us in the press, I think we'd have been quicker to let Pogba go. But I think because of this, he's kept him, and I think we've kept him, and I think, we'll probably keep him this year until the end of the year now. I don't think we're going to get anyone bidding a significant amount because he's made it so public. We're going to want the money back we paid to Juve, which I don't think Real are going to cough up. And I think it's the only club that will go for him. Juve, they always say are interested, but they've got Ronaldo, who is really hamstringing them financially. I don't know.
Has he proven that he's worth recouping that 90 million fee?
He has.
On the pitch?
Forget on the pitch. Off the pitch, he makes that money back. He's worth it for you. Yeah, Real don't need a big boost to sell shirts and whatever, but they do need a name, someone that the fans could get excited about all over the world. And they haven't got one right now because as much as you like Hazard, he's not that guy. He just isn't. Pogba is.
Pogba and Hazard in the same team, that could be interesting, couldn't it?
Yeah. But Pogba, he's a global name. He's one of the biggest names in the game. When he's not playing every week, the pundits all talk about him. Every week we talk about him, whether he plays or not, whether he plays good, bad, whatever. He's that side. But if he's happy at a club, then certainly, you'll get goals and assists from him.
Okay. You mentioned how it'll impact. Well, I mentioned it actually. I'm giving you credit for my own work there, but how it'll impact the Leipzig game. As I said, this podcast might be published after that game. We might have won and qualified for the next round. We might have been beaten and crashed out. I don't know. But speaking of the Leipzig game tomorrow, United need a point to qualify. A loss might still be good enough depending on PSG's result in Istanbul. I think it's in Istanbul, but I'm not sure. Against Istanbul anyway. The point is, it's in our hands. 5 games, 9 points, needing a result in the final game to progress in the Champions League. Would you have taken that at the beginning of the season, given the group, given the way we played the first few weeks of the season? Would you be happy with that?
No, I would. And any United fan that says they wouldn't is just lying.
I agree. I would have taken it on 0 games played. But once we'd beaten PSG and Leipzig, we had 2 gimmies, inverted commas, against Istanbul. We should be through by now. This should be a dead rubber.
Yeah, well, it's football, isn't it?
Of course.
Yeah. So I agree. I expected once we won those first 2 games that we would do. It'd be a formality then, but it wasn't. And
it's the United way, Kieran. It's the old cliche. They like making it hard for themselves.
But I'll be honest, I'm a bit nervous about tomorrow because I do think there's a good chance we get beat and it's bad. But and again, I've talked so much. I'm giving us much time to revisit that PSG game. It was a mistake to not sub Fred at half time.
It definitely was.
Because if you were watching that game, you wanted feedback from us, then yeah, we have to acknowledge it was a mistake. It was a gamble, but it did not work out, and so you have to view it as a mistake.
Yeah.
But again, I can't get too upset.
What I would say is, if Martial scored to make it 2-1, Fred gets pulled off then, doesn't he? And Matic comes on or whoever.
I think that was the case. Because it would have been the case. I think Fred, I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, but his value is that he will win the ball in the middle of the pitch and he will recycle it and feed, whether it be Bruno or if there's a counter on out wide, he'll feed it. He's fine at that and he's good at it and he's good at pressing in midfield. So I can see why Ollie took the risk, but again, didn't pay off. Tomorrow we're missing him, and we might now be missing Pogba, and
definitely missing Martial and Cavani as well.
Yeah, but with that said, I think this is the thing. Some people say we've not made any progress because we have, an injury issue in Solskjaer's first 2 Champions League legs against PSG, and we still got through. Mm-hmm. And now we're in a situation where if we go out tomorrow, people are going to say we've not made any progress because, he's got, there have been injuries again, but there were last time we got through, and now we can't even get to the knockouts. But if you think about it, we're going to go into that game potentially without Pogba, potentially without Fred, who is still a £52 million player. and does offer us something. We need him to press midfield.
Mm-hmm.
As you say, Cavani, our new signing, PSG's top scorer of all time, Martial out. You can still put out a good 11 there, really. I do worry about Fred. I think the first time I've ever heard you compliment Fred was maybe after the Leipzig game. I'm sure you did before, but yeah, that he was good.
I'm not sure.
No, I think you have before, but he was good in that game, and I do think against a team like that, we might miss his agility in the press. I think McTominay didn't look ready. You have to assume Matic will play now. And again, I don't know what he does with Pogba and Donny and Bruno now. Obviously, Bruno starts first name on the sheet, but
yeah.
I think we got City on the weekend, so
it's all boding very well. I think the good news is Mason Greenwood will start down the middle. I think that's pretty clear. I think it'll probably be Dan James maybe on the right, Rashford left, Greenwood up the middle, or it could be Juan Mata on the right. I should mention Mata's pass for Rashford's goal, outstanding pass, and that's what he can still offer, Juan Mata. So maybe he'll get a game, but I'm with you. I think it might be a struggle tomorrow night. I'm hoping, and I'm half confident we'll get it done, but I think it would just be classic naive Manchester United to crash out. I mean, it was in our hands when the goal gaped for Martial at 1-1, and it was everything he could do to miss, and he still did it. It was that could be the fine margin we talk about. But hopefully we'll be sat here next week, and you'll be viewing this podcast, having seen United go and get a result and progress to the
another 5-0 against Leipzig, please.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Can't see it, but that'd be grand.
You were just saying that it would be typical of us to fall short, but also, as we were saying a couple of weeks ago, when Ollie should have been sacked according to, half of the United world.
Yeah.
It would also be typical of us to win when we need to as well. So we'll see.
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody.
We don't know.
We've been written off so many times. Particularly this Solskjaer team, and he, formulates. It was particularly when we've been injury stricken as well, like you mentioned. And he puts an 11 out and they perform and they win comfortably on the night. That might be what we see. So it's interesting. I'm nervous, but I'm low-key confident.
Yeah. The thing, to finish for myself here, I feel the same way as you. I'm really nervous about it. And it's not inconceivable. It's a good Leipzig team. We beat 5-0, but don't be fooled. They are a really good team. They were flying in the Bundesliga. Played Bayern on the weekend, drew 3-3. Some bad defending in there, but obviously some bad attacking too from their perspective. If they get an early goal, and if they'd got that in our first game, it would have been a different scoreline and it could have been a different result. But I back Ollie because I've seen too many situations now where when you worry, he gets the tactics right, and it more often than not is a question of whether the players finish. A lot's made of, we got to the semi-finals, that's great, but you didn't get to a final. We would have, if my girlfriend watches this, she'll kick off about me. But we would have taken his chances against Seville. He had chances there. We had enough chances to win that game. I think we'll have a chance going into it. And again, I feel good about that if Rashford and Greenwood are sitting ahead of Bruno. I feel like,
Well, the good news is Leipzig are going to have to come out as well. They need to win. So
don't we? So
yeah, it plays into our hands a little bit in terms of that's where United's strengths are on the counter attack. They've still got Greenwood, Rashford. They've still got pace on the counter, and it's an away game. We're away game specialists right now. I think 9 wins in a row away from home. So it might not be as nervy as we're painting it to be. Let's hope.
Appreciate we've gone over here and you probably want to finish up, but I just want to quick. How do you think we set up?
Is Twanzebe back?
I think so.
You don't see us playing a 5?
Well, that's what. The reason I asked the question is because
I don't think he'll play 5. I think he'll play 4.
Well, weeks ago on the podcast after the Chelsea game, that typically if you play 3-5-2 versus a 3-5-2, you often end up with a low-scoring game.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being the case, they will play 3-5-2 Leipzig, I'm sure. Does he think, I want this to be a low-scoring game.
I don't think so.
Hopefully we nick it.
No. Well, you look at the last 5-6 games, we've scored 3 in each game, more or less.
Yeah.
We thrive on scoring goals. We don't win many 1-0ers. The West Brom game's an exception in the most recent run of form. So I think Solskjaer will want goals because he knows that an open game, a free-flowing game, United are going to score more than Leipzig. I think he's confident of that. So I don't think he'll set up as a 5. I think he'll set up the back 4, 2 sitters, 3 in front and a striker. I think that's how it's going to go.
Yeah, I think we might see the diamond again.
Do you? Yeah.
And I think Donny might be the right centre midfielder behind in front of Matic.
Who's on the left?
I think it'll be McTominay. I think Pogba gets dropped now.
Wouldn't shock me.
Wouldn't
shock me. Yeah. Kieron, thanks for your contributions. Do you want to sign us off this week?
No, because I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to say. But
don't know anything about the podcast after all this time.
We're on social media.
It's a good start.
And you're watching us on YouTube, presumably, so you know that. Nah, you finish off.
Okay. Thanks for watching this podcast, listening to this podcast. We're available in audio and video form on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all good podcast providers. Kieron, thank you once again for your contributions. We'll see you next week. But thanks for listening to you at home. It's always greatly appreciated. And we will see you next time on the A Game of Two Halves podcast.